For years, Barron Trump remained a mystery. Why was the youngest Trump so different from the rest of his high-profile family? While his father and siblings dominated the media, Barron chose silence, avoiding interviews, public statements, and the controversies that followed his last name. But now, everything has changed. At 18, Barron has broken his silence, and the world is left wondering, was this a carefully planned move, or an unintentional shift into the spotlight? What does his sudden public statement reveal about his future? Could this moment redefine his place in the Trump legacy? Let's get into details. Growing up under the constant glare of cameras, most children of U.S. presidents experience some level of public scrutiny. But Barron's case has been different. Since his birth in 2006, Melania Trump has been fiercely protective of him, ensuring that he had as normal a childhood as possible despite his father's high-profile career. While presidential children like Sasha and Malia Obama and Chelsea Clinton were occasionally seen speaking at events or engaging in public initiatives, Barron was rarely even heard in casual settings. His presence was often observed from a distance, stoic, expressionless, and quiet. By the time Donald Trump entered the White House in 2017, Barron was the only presidential child in recent history to live there as a minor. Even then, his life remained a mystery. While his older siblings were frequently interviewed and featured in political discussions, Barron's appearances were largely limited to official engagements, and even then, he remained in the background. Speculation grew about why he was so different from the rest of his family. Some attributed it to his mother's influence, as Melania often emphasized her desire to give him privacy. Others wondered whether Barron himself simply had no interest in the public spectacle that defined his family's existence. Classmates and those who have interacted with Barron over the years describe him as a reserved yet thoughtful individual. According to reports, his peers have called him mysterious and fascinating to talk to, with a demeanor that is noticeably different from the bold, attention-seeking style associated with his father. His towering height, standing well over 6 feet, combined with his composed and introverted personality, has only added to the intrigue surrounding him. Teachers and school staff have noted that Barron has always been polite and well-mannered, though he tends to keep conversations brief. Even his daily habits at school have drawn attention. Unlike most students who blend into the social environment, Barron has always had certain protocols in place that set him apart. Reports suggest that he followed a unique lunch and restroom routine, likely implemented for security reasons. While these precautions make sense for the son of a former president, they have only added to the sense of distance between him and his peers. Those who have shared classes with him have expressed both curiosity and admiration, acknowledging that while Barron does not seek attention, he commands a certain presence. It is this aura of mystery that has made Barron's recent actions so shocking. At 18, an age when most young adults are figuring out their first steps into independence, Barron has suddenly found himself at the center of unexpected attention. Turning 18 marked a significant moment, not just legally, as he stepped into adulthood, but also symbolically. No longer a minor under his mother's careful supervision, Barron now has the ability to make decisions about his public image. The question was never whether he would eventually break his silence, but rather when and how he would do it. With his 18th birthday came new expectations. Unlike his previous years, where he remained largely shielded from political discourse, he now faced growing speculation about whether he would follow in his father's footsteps. His decision to enroll at New York University's Stern School of Business fueled this discussion, as it seemed to align with the family's strong business background. However, one surprising choice set him apart. He opted to live at Trump Tower rather than on campus. The decision raised eyebrows, as most college students embrace dorm life as a rite of passage. But for Barron, the move was strategic. Sources suggest that security concerns played a major role, as Secret Service protection remains part of his reality. Others believe that the choice reflected his preference for privacy, reinforcing the idea that even as he transitions into adulthood, Barron is still determined to maintain a certain level of distance from the public eye. Despite this, his ambitions are becoming clearer. Barron has reportedly taken an interest in real estate, a natural extension of the Trump family legacy. He, along with a few close associates, has been involved in discussions surrounding high-end development projects in states like Utah, Arizona, and Idaho. The venture, known as Trump, Fulcher, and Roxburgh Capital Inc., appears to be a calculated first step into the business world. Yet unlike his father, who made his name by aggressively branding the Trump empire, Barron seems to be approaching business with a quieter, more analytical perspective. For years, those who have followed Barron's life have wondered what kind of man he would become once he had the freedom to shape his own path. His actions now provide the first glimpse into that future. However, the most unexpected moment was yet to come. Just when it seemed that Barron would quietly ease into adulthood through business rather than politics, he made a public statement that no one saw coming. A statement that would not only reveal his stance on key issues, but would also send shockwaves through his own family. Barron Trump's decision to attend New York University's Stern School of Business was a move that seemed both expected and surprising at the same time. Given his family's deep-rooted history in business, it made sense that he would pursue studies in finance and entrepreneurship. Yet, his choice to live at Trump Tower rather than on campus suggested a different approach, one that prioritized privacy over immersion in college life. While most freshmen embraced the independence of dormitory living, Barron's situation was far from ordinary. His status as the son of a former president meant that security concerns were a key factor in his decision. The presence of Secret Service agents would have complicated traditional dorm life, and rather than disrupting that environment, Barron opted for familiarity, choosing to stay within the luxury and security of his family's Manhattan residence. His transition into adulthood came with heightened media interest. While he had largely been shielded from public scrutiny during his father's presidency, there was now a renewed curiosity about how he would navigate this new chapter. Reports from those who have interacted with him suggest that he remains just as reserved as ever. Classmates who have spoken about him describe him as polite but distant, someone who prefers to keep conversations short. Teachers and faculty members, too, have noted that while Barron carries himself with confidence, he is not one to seek attention. Despite this, his presence at certain events has not gone unnoticed. His attendance at his father's second presidential campaign events has fueled speculation about whether he will eventually step into the political sphere. Unlike his older siblings, who became deeply involved in their father's business and political career, Barron has so far remained neutral, making no public statements about his views. This neutrality has only added to the intrigue surrounding him. Some believe he is simply uninterested in politics, while others suspect that he is being deliberately cautious, waiting for the right time to reveal his stance. One of the few people to have shared rare insights about Barron is his mother, Melania Trump. In a recent interview, she described him as highly intelligent and well-spoken, someone who enjoys discussing a wide range of topics. According to her, Barron has a strong interest in global affairs and economics, which aligns with his decision to study business. Melania has always played a key role in shaping Barron's upbringing, ensuring that he was raised away from the chaotic world of politics. Unlike his siblings, who were brought into the Trump brand at an early age, Barron was protected from the pressures of public life for as long as possible. His physical presence alone has also drawn attention. At 6'7", he towers over most people, including his father. Those who have met him in person often remark on how his height and posture make him appear even more imposing. His presence at public events, even when silent, carries weight simply because of his stature. It is perhaps this combination of silence and visibility that makes Barron such an interesting figure. He does not seek attention, yet he cannot avoid it. While he has not spoken publicly about his ambitions, there are signs that he is beginning to carve out his own path. His decision to pursue business rather than law or politics suggests that he is more interested in following a corporate trajectory rather than stepping into the political limelight. However, given his family's legacy, it is nearly impossible to separate his future from public interest. Whether he likes it or not, Barron Trump is someone the world is watching. But what happens when someone so accustomed to silence finally chooses to speak? His recent appearance at a high-profile event hinted at a shift in his approach. While he did not give a full speech, his brief comments marked the first time he had publicly addressed a large audience. The response was immediate. News outlets quickly picked up on his words, analyzing every aspect of his tone and delivery. Some praised him for his composure, while others speculated about what his statement meant for the future of the Trump legacy. For years, the Trump name has been synonymous with strong, unfiltered opinions. Donald Trump himself has built an entire career on bold statements and unwavering confidence. His older children, particularly Donald Jr. and Eric, have continued this tradition, making headlines for their vocal support of their father's policies. In contrast, Barron's silence had always been a stark contrast to this family dynamic. Now, with just a few carefully chosen words, he had done something that no one expected. He had stepped into the conversation, and the world was listening. Barron Trump's brief but deliberate remarks sent ripples through media circles, political analysts, and the public alike. Though he had always been perceived as the quietest member of his family, his decision to finally step forward raised more questions than it answered. His statement was neither controversial nor groundbreaking, yet it was significant for one reason: it came from him. For the first time, Barron had directly engaged with the world in a way that suggested he was no longer content with remaining in the background. The immediate response was a mixture of surprise and speculation. Some viewed his words as a sign that he was preparing to take a more active role in shaping his future, while others saw them as nothing more than a one-time occurrence, a rare glimpse into his thoughts, before he once again faded into the shadows. News outlets dissected every aspect of his demeanor: the way he carried himself, the subtle shifts in his tone, the careful phrasing of his words. Social media erupted with discussions, with many debating whether Barron was intentionally stepping into the public eye, or if this was merely an isolated moment. His father's reaction, however, was noticeably absent. Donald Trump, known for his rapid responses to any media frenzy, did not immediately address his son's statement. This silence only added to the intrigue. Did he approve of Barron's words, or was he wary of what they might signify? Unlike his older children, who had been actively involved in Trump family affairs from a young age, Barron had always been treated differently. Melania had ensured that he was not pressured into the same roles that Donald Jr., Eric, and Ivanka had taken on. But now, with Barron officially an adult, questions arose about whether his father expected him to take a more defined position within the family's legacy. Melania's influence on Barron's upbringing had always been distinct. While the rest of the Trump family thrived in the spotlight, she prioritized privacy and structure. In past interviews, she had described Barron as intelligent, thoughtful, and highly independent. Unlike his siblings, who had been shaped by the relentless media exposure of their father's political career, Barron had been allowed to develop his interests away from public scrutiny. His decision to remain quiet for so many years may not have been a sign of disinterest, but rather a reflection of his mother's careful guidance. Yet, even Melania's protective approach could not shield Barron forever. With the Trump name came expectations, and with expectations came pressure. His presence at certain political events had already sparked speculation about whether he would eventually take on a more public-facing role. The fact that his father had not commented on his recent statement left room for interpretation. Some believed it was a sign that Donald Trump was allowing his son to chart his own course. Others suspected that Barron's words had not been part of an orchestrated plan, and the former president was taking a measured approach before addressing the situation. Despite the uncertainty surrounding his future, one thing was clear: Barron Trump was no longer an invisible figure. The media had long been fascinated with his quiet existence, but now they had something real to analyze. Every decision he made from this point forward would be watched closely. Would he continue to engage with the public, or would he retreat back into silence? Would he align himself with his family's political ambitions, or would he pursue an entirely different path? His actions in the days following his statement provided no clear answers. He maintained his routine, attending classes at New York University and avoiding any further public discussions. There were no additional statements, no interviews, and no attempts to build on the momentum his words had created. But this, in itself, was telling. It suggested that Barron was not rushing into anything. Unlike his father, who thrived on dominating the news cycle, Barron appeared to be taking a different approach, one that was calculated, patient, and deliberate. There was a growing sense that Barron understood the weight of his words. Speaking once was enough to shift public attention in his direction, and he seemed fully aware of what that meant. Those who had followed his life closely knew that he was not impulsive. He did not seek headlines, nor did he appear eager to capitalize on the curiosity surrounding him. This alone set him apart from many figures born into high-profile families. But the bigger question remained: what did his words mean for the Trump family as a whole? His siblings had long been vocal about their views. making it clear where they stood on issues ranging from business to politics. Barron, on the other hand, had left his statement open to interpretation. Did his silence afterward indicate uncertainty, or was it a strategic decision to let the world absorb his words before making his next move? The lack of clarity only fueled further speculation. Some suggested that he was testing the waters, gauging how the public would react before deciding whether to continue engaging. Others believed that he was simply exercising his independence, speaking on his own terms without a larger agenda. Regardless of the motive, his decision to break his silence had already changed how people perceived him. He was no longer just the youngest Trump, he was now a figure with his own voice, however sparingly he chose to use it. The world had barely finished analyzing Barron Trump's unexpected statement when the silence that followed became just as intriguing. Unlike his father and siblings who thrived on media engagement and public debate, Barron seemed to step back after his remarks, letting the conversation unfold without his interference. His choice to remain quiet despite the growing speculation only reinforced one thing: he was not playing by the rules people expected from Trump. For those who had followed his life closely, this wasn't surprising. Barron had never shown an interest in following the predictable path of making headlines or crafting an image for public consumption. His decision to study business rather than law or politics, his choice to live at Trump Tower instead of on campus, and his overall reserved nature suggested a person who valued control over his own narrative. While some had hoped that his recent words signaled the beginning of a more outspoken version of Barron, his reluctance to build on the moment suggested something else. He was not interested in performing for the public's expectations. Yet, silence itself can be powerful. With just a few words, he had reshaped the way people saw him. No longer just the youngest Trump, no longer just a private figure kept away from controversy, he had now proven that when he did choose to speak, people listened. What he said was almost less important than the fact that he had spoken at all. Reactions within his own family remained unclear. Donald Trump, a man known for his rapid responses and willingness to address anything involving his family, had yet to make any definitive statement regarding his son's sudden presence in the media discourse. Those familiar with Trump's style believed that this silence was strategic. If Barron's words had aligned completely with the family's brand, there would have been public praise, a show of unity. The absence of that left room for speculation. The Trump family had always operated in a way that rewarded loyalty and active participation in its legacy. Donald Jr. and Eric had built their careers within the Trump organization, openly supporting their father's political ambitions and standing by him through controversies. Ivanka had played a more polished role, carefully navigating her father's world while crafting an image that blended business, diplomacy, and public service. Tiffany, while less visible, had still engaged with the family's political circles on occasion. Barron, however, had never been pushed into that world. Melania Trump's influence had kept him at a distance from the chaos that often surrounded the Trump name. She had, by all accounts, made it clear that Barron's upbringing would not be dictated by political strategy. But now that he was an adult, that layer of protection was no longer the same. He now had the autonomy to make his own choices, and whether he intended to or not, his recent public moment had put him in a position where those choices mattered more than ever. The question now was what came next. Would Barron Trump build on this newfound attention, or would he retreat once again into the private life he had known for so long? His next move could define not only his own path, but also his place within his family's complex and highly scrutinized legacy. Public opinion remained divided. Some saw him as a potential wild card, someone who could introduce a new dynamic to the Trump brand, either by embracing it or by subtly distancing himself from it. Others believed his silence was an indication that he would ultimately choose a different path altogether, one that avoided the public stage his family was so accustomed to. The only certainty was that for the first time in years, Barron Trump was no longer just a name attached to a political dynasty. He had, through his own timing and choice, stepped into a space where his presence carried weight. Whether intentional or not, his actions had sparked a discussion that would not disappear overnight. The speculation surrounding Barron Trump's next move had only intensified. His brief remarks had ignited a media storm, yet his refusal to expand on them left room for endless interpretations. Was he carefully planning his next steps? Or was this simply a moment of curiosity that had been blown out of proportion? The world watched closely, waiting to see if he would step further into the public eye or retreat once again into the privacy that had defined his life for so long. Even among those closest to the Trump family, there was uncertainty. Barron had always been different from his father and siblings, and his actions reflected that. Unlike Donald Jr., who had become a political force within the family, or Ivanka, who had strategically navigated between business and politics, Barron had remained an enigma. His public persona, or lack of one, was shaped by years of conscious effort to keep him out of controversy. But now, with his newfound independence, the carefully maintained mystery around him was starting to break apart. His silence following his initial statement could be interpreted in multiple ways. Some saw it as a sign of careful planning, a deliberate effort to measure public reaction before making another move. Others believed it indicated hesitation, an internal conflict between stepping into the world his family had dominated for decades and maintaining the autonomy he had valued so much. Either way, Barron had been thrust into a position where his choices, intentional or not, were being scrutinized in ways they never had been before. The media's role in shaping his narrative could not be ignored. Every appearance, every interaction, even the way he carried himself in public was analyzed. Was he more like his father, known for his outspoken and often controversial statements? Or was he following a different path, one that rejected the traditional expectations placed upon him? His decision to study business instead of law or politics suggested a desire to stay within familiar territory. Yet his reluctance to publicly align himself with his family's political ambitions suggested a deeper level of independence. Family members had remained largely silent on the matter. Melania, as always, kept her thoughts private, choosing not to publicly comment on Barron's growing media attention. Donald Trump, while focused on his political career, had made no clear indication of his expectations for his youngest son. While his older children were firmly embedded in the Trump brand, Barron remained on the outside, a figure whose future was still unwritten. For many, this unpredictability was what made Barron so intriguing. He was not an extension of his father's political machine, nor was he entirely removed from it. He occupied a space in between, connected to one of the most influential families in modern American politics, yet seemingly detached from the expectations that came with that name. If he chose to embrace the public stage, he had the potential to become a powerful voice, whether in business, media, or even politics. If he chose to remain private, he would continue to be a subject of fascination, a figure defined by what was unknown, rather than what was said. His next steps remained unclear, and perhaps that was by design. While the world debated what his brief remarks meant, Barron himself had yet to show his hand. Unlike his father, who had built an entire persona around constant visibility, Barron's power seemed to come from the opposite, his ability to remain just beyond reach. And in a world where being loud often equates to influence, Barron Trump has proven that sometimes the greatest impact comes from saying very little at all. With that, we have reached the end of today's video. If you have come this far with us, be sure to check out other videos on the channel.